This is Commission President Toshiko Hasegawa convening the regular meeting of March 11th, 2025. The time is 10:30 a.m. We're meeting in person today at the Port of Seattle Headquarters Building Commission Chambers and virtually on Microsoft Teams. Present with me today are Commissioners Calkins, Cho, Fellman, and Mohammed, who are currently gathered in the executive session room awaiting the opening of the public meeting. We'll now recess into executive session to discuss one item regarding litigation or potential litigation or legal risk per RCW 42.30.1101I and national security per RCW 42.30.1101AI for approximately 60 minutes. We'll reconvene in a public session at 12 p.m. Thank you.
We are now in recess. Thank you.
This is Commission President Toshiko Hasegawa reconvening the regular meeting of March 11th, 2025. The time is 12:07 p.m. We're meeting in person today at the Port of Seattle Headquarters Building Commission Chambers and virtually on Microsoft Teams. Deputy Clerk Payne, please call the roll of all the commissioners who are in attendance.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins will be down shortly. Commissioner Cho?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasegawa?
Present.
And Commissioner Mohammed, are you online?
I am present.
Great, thank you so much. Do you have a quorum?
A few housekeeping items before we begin. For everyone in the meeting room, pretty please turn your phones to silent. That goes for my colleagues as well. For anyone participating on Microsoft Teams, please mute your speakers when not actively speaking or presenting. Please keep your cameras off unless you're a commissioner or a member of staff participating virtually and are actively addressing the commission. Members of the public addressing the commission during public comment may turn on their cameras when their name is called to speak, and will turn them back off again at the conclusion of their remarks. For anyone at the dais, please turn off computer speakers and silence your devices. Please also remember to address your request to speak through the chair and wait to speak until you've been recognized. You'll turn your microphones on and off as needed. All of the items noted here are going to ensure a smooth meeting, so thank you very much in advance. Additionally, all votes today will be taken by the roll call method or by general consent, so it's clear for anyone participating virtually how the votes are cast. Commissioners will say aye or nay when their names are called. I'd like to open with an acknowledgement that we're meeting on the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people, with whom we share a commitment to steward these natural resources for ourselves and future generations. Please note for the record that we have been joined by Commissioner Calkins. This meeting is being digitally recorded and may be viewed or heard at any time on the Port's website and may be rebroadcast by King County Television. Now please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now, the first item of business today is the approval of the agenda. As a reminder, if a commissioner wishes to make a general comment for or against an item on the consent agenda, it is not necessary to pull that item for separate discussion. Rather, a commissioner may offer general supporting or opposing comments later in this meeting once we get to that part of the agenda. However, it is appropriate if a commissioner wants to ask questions of staff or wishes to have a dialogue on a consent agenda item to request the item be pulled for separate discussion at this time. Now, it's my understanding that staff would like to walk on two items to the consent agenda, the first of which would be item 8M. For the record, it's a request for the commission to authorize executive director to approve funding to advertise and execute a major public works construction contract for the completion of the Pier 66 Grand Staircase Replacement Project. This request is in the amount of $3,560,000 for a total estimated project cost of $4,060,000. Commissioners, may I have a motion and a second to approve this walk-on item?
So moved. Second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Cho and seconded by Commissioner Calkins. Deputy Clerk Payne, please call the roll for the vote. Absolutely.
Is there a memo associated with this?
It was not attached as being walked on by staff last minute, but if you'd like to pull it from the consent agenda later, there is a presentation that could be given.
As long as it's online, it's someplace?
It will be afterwards.
Okay,
Yeah.
no problem.
Thank you.
Deputy Clerk Payne, please call the roll for the vote to walk this item on.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho?
Aye.
Commissioner Fellman?
Aye.
Commissioner Hasagawa?
Aye.
And Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Thank you. There are 5 ayes and 0 nays for this item.
The motion passes and has been 8M has been included into the consent agenda item. The second item is item 8N as in Nancy. It is a request for the commission to authorize the executive director to increase and amend the indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, or IDIQ professional services agreements for roofing related to consulting services with a cumulative total amount not to exceed $2,700,000. Is there a motion and a second for my colleagues to include this?
So moved. Second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Cho and seconded by Commissioner Fellman. Deputy Clerk Payne, please call the roll for the vote to add this to the consent agenda.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Hasagawa?
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Thank you. That's 5 ayes and 0 nays for this item.
And we would like to reiterate that both items that have been included on the consent agenda item for action today will be made available online to the public. And the reason for them being added is the timeline necessary in order to execute on this. So that's needed by staff. With that, Commissioners, are there any items you'd like to pull from the consent agenda or any additional motions to rearrange the orders of the day? Seeing none, the question is now upon the approval of the consent agenda, Is there a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved. Second.
The motion's been made by Commissioner Cho and seconded by Commissioner Fellman. Is there any objection to approve the agenda as amended? Hearing none, the agenda is approved as amended. Thank you. That brings us to the next item on our agenda, which is the Executive Director's Report. Executive Director Metrick, the floor is yours.
Thank you, President Hasagawa. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I have some sad news to share this morning. First, we learned on Monday that one of our colleagues, Mark Bell, a facilities manager with the Maritime Division, passed away unexpectedly this past Sunday. We share our condolences with Mark's wife, Robin, and his family and colleagues that are carrying Mark's thoughts in our thoughts and prayers. Also, many of you are aware that we're celebrating the life of Peter McGraw, our senior media officer who passed away in February on this coming Saturday evening at 6:30 p.m. We have more details available for anyone who wants to attend the service. You know, this reminds us that the Port is a family of dedicated professionals who believe in each other and our work and spend a lot of time together. So we feel these losses very deeply. Turning to our business lines, I have a few updates on successful community events to share. Last Saturday at Bell Harbor International Conference Center, the external relations and cruise teams supported 2 important events to expand the economic impact of our upcoming cruise season. Working with local vendors, we held our annual cruise fair, which connects local residents to full and part-time seasonal jobs. We're still gathering the final details, but we heard from 2 vendors that they hired more than 45 people on the spot for cruise jobs beginning in the next few weeks. One floor away, our staff was supporting the Holland America Alaska cruise event, which brings more than 2,000 people to the conference center to meet with cruise bookers and Alaska tour providers. Visit Seattle and more than a dozen Alaska businesses were on site and making bookings for the upcoming season. On this past Sunday, we hosted the 97th Blessing of the Fleet at Fisherman's Terminal. This annual tradition is where we ask for blessings of a plentiful and safe season for those that go to sea to put seafood on our tables. I want to thank Commissioner Hasagawa, who braved the elements, for attending this event. Speaking of our Maritime Division, I hope you saw the good news that Delmas Whitaker has been selected as our new Chief Operating Officer for the Maritime Division. Delmas brings a great deal of experience to this position, having contributed across both the Port's aviation and maritime divisions, and will oversee a significant portion of the maritime business. So I'd like to congratulate Delmas. Turning to aviation, I also wanted you to know that on March 1st, more than 200 trees and shrubs were planted at a port stewardship site north of the airport. This work goes quickly with volunteers. About 50 community members attended, plus a dozen staff were there as well. Thank you to our Aviation Division, Environment and Sustainability Department, and External Relations team for supporting this work. Pivoting to national policy for a moment, we're expecting the most dramatic reshaping of our federal government in our lifetime. Between tariffs and the federal proposal to charge up to $1.5 million for Chinese-built vessels to enter our U.S. ports, declines in federal staffing, and massive swings in federal priorities, I'll compare the amount of uncertainty in our port-related industries and community to what we felt at the beginning of the pandemic. We are currently tracking approximately 100 executive actions and working very closely with our industry partners in aviation and maritime and our federal delegation to ensure that we're able to continue to excel in our role as an economic engine for the region going forward. The port is beginning to experience impacts from executive actions, although we are far from knowing what the final impact will be. Right now, we are mostly experiencing change and uncertainty in our staffing of our federal partners, which we anticipate will make it harder to complete our plans, projects, and initiatives, and some operations. We also have a list of unpaid bills, as federal payments via credit card are currently frozen. One of our staff briefings today is a presentation outlining our understanding of potential impacts as it relates to federal grants, which we believe is manageable but concerning. Coupled with the unknown effects from tariffs and other swings in federal policies, I will intend to bring a conservative and cautious approach to the 2026 budget season as we determine how to best manage existing and any new priorities. Just as we did during the pandemic, I will continue to prioritize our workforce. I know that some employees have reached out with concerns about layoffs or furloughs. As I stated in my weekly update to employees last week, based on the information we have today, I'm not planning to take any of those types of actions. As we learned during the pandemic, there are many ways the port can adapt if necessary, and we certainly will. Finally, we are underway with many recognitions and observations in March. Our Women's Initiative Network Employee Resource Group, or WIN, prepared a number of informative and fun engagement opportunities for Women's History Month. Women in Construction Week was recognized March 2nd to the 8th. Celebrating since 1989, women in the construction industry. This year's theme, Together We Rise, honors the strength and knowledge of the vital role women have made in shaping the future of construction. March is also full of richly rewarding religious and cultural observations. The 30-day Ramadan observation began Friday, February 28th for Muslims. The Mardi Gras was celebrated on March 4th, and the 40-day Christian Lent season began March 5th with Ash Wednesday and ends on Holy Saturday, the day before Easter. The Jewish religion celebrates the Purim holiday on Thursday of this week. The Hindu festival of Holi takes place on March 14th, and St. Patrick's Day is right around the corner on March 17th. Persians celebrate Nowruz, the first day of their Iranian solar year, on March 20th as well. So there's much to celebrate in March, and with the weather that we have, it's great to have so many celebrations. Moving to today's meeting, I want to highlight a few items on our agenda. On our consent agenda, we have several collective bargaining agreements, funding for exit lane staffing to prepare for the upcoming busy travel period, and additional funding for corrosion protection and facility upgrade projects, ensuring that our infrastructure is maintained. We also seek your authorization to continue providing career navigation services for our Duwamish Valley Community Benefits Commitment, and you'll hear a briefing on that today. Under presentations and staff reports, as I mentioned, you'll receive a presentation on potential impacts of changes to federal grants. And we'll wrap up today's meeting with a presentation on the 2024 Commission Committee accomplishments and 2025 work plans. Commissioners, this concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Executive Director Metrick. Are there any questions for the executive at this time? Seeing none, we'll move forward to committee reports. Erica Chung, Strategic Aid, will make the report.
Good afternoon, President Hasagawa, Commissioners, and Executive Director Metrick. I have one committee report for you today. On February 18th, Commissioners Cho and Fellman convened the Aviation Committee. Commissioners heard an update on the federal and state regulatory and policy landscapes. This update highlighted areas where shifts in the federal and state governments may impact SCA operations and capital projects. Responding to Commissioners' specific questions about how recent federal actions would change SCA's regulatory environment, staff advised that this is still a fast-moving topic and expressed uncertainty as to how these actions will ultimately play out. This concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Erica? Seeing none, thank you very much. We will move forward, and that brings us to the public comment portion of our meeting. We entertain public comment as an important part of the public process. Comments are received and considered by the Commission in its deliberations. So before we take public comment, let's go ahead and roll the video to review our rules for in-person and virtual public comment. Go ahead, Deputy Clerk Payne.
Thank you. 1 second.
The Port of Seattle Commission welcomes you to our meeting today. As noted, public comment is an important part of the public process, and the Port of Seattle Commission thanks you for joining us. Before proceeding, we will overview the rules governing public comment for your general information. Each speaker will have 2 minutes to speak unless otherwise revised by the presiding officer for the purposes of meeting efficiency, and the speaker shall keep their remarks within the allotted time provided. A timer will appear on the screen, and a buzzer will sound at the end of the speaker's comment period. The Commission accepts comments on items appearing on its agenda and items related to the conduct of port business. The presiding officer will ask speakers to limit their comments to these topics. This rule applies to both introductory and concluding remarks. Disruptions of Commission public meetings are prohibited. General disruptions include, but are not limited to, the following: speaking before being recognized by the presiding officer, holding or placing banners and signs in the meeting room in a way that endangers others or obstructs the flow of people or view of others at the meeting, intentionally disrupting, disturbing, or otherwise impeding attendance or participation at a meeting, refusing to follow the direction of the presiding officer or security personnel, attempting to use the comment time for purposeful delay without conveying a discernible message, using the comment period to assist in a campaign for election of any person to any office or for the promotion of or opposition to any ballot proposition except when addressing action being taken by the Commission on a ballot proposition appearing on its agenda, directing public comments to the audience, engaging in abusive or harassing behavior, including but not limited to derogatory remarks based on age, race, color, national origin, ancestry, religion, disability, pregnancy, sex, gender, sexual orientation, transgender status, marital status, or any other category protected by law, the use of obscene or profane language and gestures, assaults or other threatening behavior, and sexual misconduct or sexual harassment. For safety purposes, individuals are asked not to physically approach commissioners or staff at the meeting table during the meeting. Individuals may provide written public comment before or after the meeting, and in addition, speakers may offer written materials to the Commission clerk for distribution during their testimony to the Commission. A detailed list of the public comment rules is available through the Commission clerk. If a meeting is disrupted by an individual in attendance in the meeting room or by an individual providing public comment in person or virtually, the Port will impose progressive consequences that may result in exclusion from future meetings. Written materials provided to the clerk will be included in today's meeting record. The clerk has a list of those prepared to speak. When your name is called, please come to the testimony table or unmute yourself if joining virtually. Repeat your name for the record and state your topic related to an item on the agenda or related to the conduct of port business. For those joining virtually, when you have concluded your remarks, please turn off your camera and mute your microphone. Our public comment period will now commence. Thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you, recorded voice man. So we are going to move into public comment at this time, and I can guide us through this time, Deputy Clerk Payne. And we will begin with Elizabeth Burton because we have so few people signed up. I'm going to exercise chair's privilege and give folks 3 minutes instead of 2 to make comment. So come on up, Elizabeth. You've got 3 minutes. Please be sure to state your name and the item of business that it relates to, and then we will start the clock.
My name is Elizabeth Burton, and my comment is a suggestion relating to the plain language order.
Oh, great, thank you.
Good afternoon. In January, you adopted a plain language order whose purpose is to increase clarity, simplicity, and transparency in port communications with the public. My suggestion/request is that when talking about your cruise business, you stop reporting the number of revenue passengers. Almost no one in the public knows what a revenue passenger is. So every time you use that expression, you are violating the intent of the plain language order. Note that I'm not asking you to continue publishing the number of revenue passengers while omitting the word revenue. That would be even more misleading. You're actually doing that on parts of your current cruise dashboard. What I'm asking is for you to be clear, honest, and straightforward regarding how many passengers are taking cruises. That's what the public wants to know. Spreading confusion further, the press also doesn't understand this phrase. At the start of last year's cruise season, the Seattle Times reported that Stephanie Jones Stebbins said that nearly 1.7 million passengers are expected to depart Seattle on 276 cruises. Presumably, Stephanie Jones Stebbins did not say this. She probably said that Seattle was expecting 1.7 million revenue passengers. The reporter, Caitlin Freeman, corrected the article after I contacted her and alerted her to the misunderstanding. I'll just mention also the previous year, the reporter also misunderstood revenue passengers. In that case, she thought it meant revenue. I corrected her as well. You're welcome. The cruise dashboard, celebrated for its transparency, lists revenue passengers on one page with no definition of what that means, while on two other pages, the label is just passengers, but in fact, these are still listings of revenue passengers. This is not transparent. I urge you to live up to your stated values. Please stop sacrificing those values in what I imagine is an attempt to inflate the public perception of how big your cruise business is. Thank you very much.
And our next speaker is Matt Ventosa, coming up.
Thank you. I'm Executive Director, and Commissioners, thank you for this time. My name is Matt Ventosa. I am the Vice President of the ILW Local 19 here in Seattle. First of all, I want to state that it saddens me to hear that that Peter passed. I was not aware of that. It's very upsetting. I've known Peter for many, many years, and Peter did a fantastic job. He had, with the public relations, he had written some stuff that he'd asked. For me, he had written some stuff that I was able to convey in the public, and it really saddens me to hear this news. And I'm sorry for the port's loss and my loss in particular. He was a great guy, and that's just sad. So I'm sorry about that, but it's bothers me. Okay, back to my business. Item 8J. I'm asking that you approve the Port of Seattle Police's tentative agreement that was approved by the officers of the union. I'm sorry, by the officers union, and I also hope that the sergeants and commanders contracts go smoothly as well. T5 cold ironing, it's still having issues. My colleagues have not been successful in using the shore power at some of the vaults. The vaults are where the ships plug in. It's not the substation. Vault S2 is not operational at the South Berth again. They don't know when it's going to be fixed. They're thinking it might be a short fix, quick fix, but regardless, we've been having nothing but problems. I would encourage the port to look very carefully at what your agreement work contract is going to look like for shore power at T18. As for holding the vendors and the contractors responsible for not producing a properly working product when they say the work is complete. SSA has inherited a lemon, and they're being responsible to fix this. And they didn't build this system. They shouldn't be responsible to fix it. The vendors and the contractors should be. Maybe write into your some sort of multi-million-dollar liability insurance for a period of years. I don't know what that would look like, so that the vendors and the contractors are responsible for this if it doesn't work at Pier 18 like it has at Pier 5. Pier 5 has just been a mess ever since the beginning. It hasn't worked properly yet. It comes and goes. It's on and off. That's not what the taxpayers paid for. In addition to that, when you take on the Pier 18 project, My suggestion would be you have one person responsible from the port, and that person is responsible to oversee this project with no excuses. There's too much finger pointing going on. Nobody wants to take responsibility, and it's embarrassing. The buck stops here, and somebody has to take responsibility for that. Thank you.
Matt, you still have 30 seconds left. Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our signups in advance in person. Is there anybody online who's joined us that would like to make public comment at this time? Hearing none, is there anyone else in the room who would like to make public comment that did not sign up in advance?
Apologies, Madam President. Gus Williams had just raised his hand. Would you like to speak, Gus?
Welcome, Gus. Please state your name for the record, the item of business that it relates to, and then we'll start the clock for you. And you can engage your camera if you like. Go for it.
All right. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Gus Williams, City of Seattle Climate and Workforce Development Advisor. I'm speaking on behalf of the Duwamish Valley Career Navigator Initiative.
Go ahead.
All right. I'm here today to testify on and bring, comments to this initiative. As we all know, Seattle has long been a proud and national leader in environmental movement, but much is still needed to advance our environmental justice initiatives. We must transition our buildings towards clean, sustainable energy, expand affordable and reliable transportation aspects, and also help fix structural inequalities. The transition to clean energy workforce will create many jobs and opportunities that directly benefits the people of Seattle. Investing in these energy efficiency create local and well-paying jobs at all levels for installation contractors, electricians, to sheet metal workers, and engineers. We see that there's value in this initiative to support it, and the reason why is that the Duwamish Valley program and Duwamish Valley region has long been impacted by environmental injustices. So with that being said, our support for this movement and for this work is to engage residents of this region to make sure that they have aspect and access to these high-paying careers within the clean energy and construction sector. The City of Seattle currently funds 6 different programs that this aligns with historically, and want to make sure that there's opportunities to engage our residents in the Duwamish Valley to take part in this new robust green energy field to, number one, support our movement within the environmental justice aspect of our work, but also to make sure that there's opportunities for people to get the skills they need to transition and create sustainable family wages. So I'm here today to speak on that on the behalf of our colleagues at the port, to say that we wholeheartedly support this measure and we want to see this initiative move forward.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Can you do me a favor and spell your name for the record?
Gus Williams, Williams. I'm the Climate and Workforce Development Advisor at the City of Seattle Office of Sustainability and Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. We appreciate your partnership. And Deputy Clerk, please give a synopsis of any written comments that we've received.
Thank you. One moment. Good afternoon, members of the Commission and Executive Director Metric. We have received one written comment for today's meeting. Natalie Franz writes to address the ongoing rise in greenhouse gas emissions, the worsening climate crisis, and the growing pollution associated with the cruise industry, and urges the Commission to take action to reduce the environmental harms caused by Seattle's cruise sector. That's all we have for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So the next item on our order of business is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and will be adopted by one sweeping motion. Items removed from the consent agenda will be considered separately immediately after adoption of the remaining consent agenda items. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda covering items 8A through N, and please note that M and N were walked on and item 8K was not assigned.
So moved. Second.
The motion has been made by Commissioner Cho and seconded by Commissioner Felleman. Commissioners, please say aye or nay when your name is called to approve the consent agenda.
Commissioner Calkins.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Felleman.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed.
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hasagawa.
Aye.
Thank you. There are 5 ayes and 0 nays.
Wonderful. The motion passes. So carrying on, we have one new business item. Deputy Clerk Payne, please read the item into the record, and then Executive Director Metric will introduce it.
Thank you. 1 second.
I can read it into the record.
1 second. I've got it. Thank you. This is item 10A, authorization for the executive director to direct the Port of Seattle to contract up to a total of $480,000 with an organizations capable of providing career navigation services to primarily Duwamish Valley residents.
Commissioners, we're going to move. We're now going to move to a report from our workforce development team on the Duwamish Valley Career Navigator, which is an initiative that has moved from the external relations team to workforce development to help us advance our community benefits commitment in the Duwamish Valley. Anna Pavlik is here from the Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion to walk us through the plans, and also accompanying her is Robert Brown, the Program Manager in Data Analysis for Workforce Development. So, thank you. Anna.
Thank you, Executive Director and Commission. My name is Anna Pavlik. I'm the Workforce Development Director here at the Port of Seattle.
Hello, Executive Director and Commission. My name is Robert Brown. I'm the Program Manager for for Green Jobs and at the Port of Seattle.
Great, thank you. So we are here today to ask to be able to proceed with the solicitation and procurement of a community partner to fill the scope of a Duwamish Valley Career Navigator. And just want to note for you that this work has been funded already in the 2025 budget. Next slide, please. So by way of just a little bit of background, which I know you're very familiar with the Duwamish Valley Community Benefits Commitment, but wanted to note that one of the primary goals is economic prosperity in place for Duwamish Valley residents. And more specifically, the Community Benefits Commitment called out career awareness building, employment services, educational opportunities, all with the intent of preparing as many Duwamish Valley residents as possible to fill living wage jobs in port-related careers. And so one of the very first investments made from that commitment was the Duwamish Valley Green Jobs Program, started in 2020, led by External Relations with co-executive sponsors of OEDI and Maritime Environment and Sustainability. This work prepared both young people and adults for a variety of green jobs. Next slide, please. And was a very big commitment made by a coalition of partners led by Dirt Corps and a whole coalition from the Duwamish Valley of community organizations. Incredibly difficult work to do during the pandemic, but fortunately a lot of this training for both youth and adults could take place outside. So 44 youth, 43 adults over the course of 3 years gained skills in ecological restoration, green stormwater infrastructure development, and were overwhelmingly Black, Indigenous people of color, as you can see the demographics there, and was a success by all involved, the youth, and we've met with all the coalition partners and have shared their lessons learned from it with us. Next slide, please. So before I pass it over to Robert to explain what we plan to do moving forward, I just wanted to note that as a growing effort within the port around workforce development, our continuous improvement efforts are focused on serving as many people as possible with getting them into and retained in living wage port-related careers. So our goal with this effort is twofold. One, to ensure we get as many folks into these opportunities, but also ensuring that we're also serving those who've been left behind and using the talents of the Duwamish Valley residents, the breadth of skills and talents they bring to us at the port and the businesses we work with. So I'll pass it over to Robert.
Thanks, Anna. So when the Duwamish Valley Green Jobs Program came to an end in 2024, community partners and program participants expressed a need for more focused job placement services. In response to this and understanding the need and demand for job placement support in the Duwamish Valley, the Office of Equity, Diversity, Inclusion, and Workforce Development have proposed the Duwamish Valley Career Navigation Service. This initiative will help connect Duwamish Valley job seekers to pre-existing city-funded, county-funded green job training programs and other port-related employment opportunities. We know just how critical these sectors are to the shape and future of our region, and this will be an imperative step towards ensuring that Duwamish Valley job seekers are able to access these opportunities that lead to family wage careers. The Office of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion and External Relations will each contribute $80,000 to this program for a total contract value of $480,000. Next slide, please. Now, I know there's a lot of information on this slide, and the font's a little small, so I want to carefully walk you guys through this, as I know just how invested each of you are to our workforce development outcomes and the growth of the green economy and the careers that follow. So I'll start in phase 1 of the navigation process. In phase 1, the navigator will be focused on outreach and recruitment in the Duwamish Valley. They will be focused on working closely with community-based organizations and the Duwamish River Community Hub staff to ensure that their outreach and recruitment are taking places in places that are furthest away from opportunity and for those who historically have not been presented these opportunities. Moving into phase 2, the navigator will then be focused on placing participants into job training programs. Now, depending on their job readiness and employer demand, the navigator will focus on onboarding individuals into these job training programs or directly into employment. They will also work to build lasting relationships with employers in the job sector, port-related job sectors, as well as helping employers understand the importance of hiring candidates that come through this program. And then moving into the post-training phase of this process in phases 4 and 5, the navigator will then focus on placing job-ready participants into port-related jobs. Now, this might include the job search phase, such as resume revision, interview preparation, and job matching. We understand that the job demand is volatile at times, and so we really want to ensure that these individuals are going into green jobs, but also port-related jobs such as construction, maritime, and aviation. Finally, in phase 6, the navigator will then pivot to career retention and job support services. So once participants are placed into jobs, the navigator will then focus on ongoing support to track progress, aid improvement, and ensure long-term success of the candidates once they're placed into jobs. Now, we want to be clear that this program and initiative is not just about creating employable candidates, but it's about creating foundations of futures. And it's about utilizing the strengths of the Duwamish community, the strengths that the Duwamish community already possesses, and then making space in the Duwamish community for sustainable growth to happen for generations to come. Thank you.
Next slide, please. So
Thank you for the glass.
we're proposing a transition from the
Very pretty.
career awareness.
Thank
policy.
Okay, point of order. We need everyone online to please mute your microphones. You're disrupting the meeting. Please continue.
Thank you. So the transition that we're requesting today is to take the Duwamish Valley Green Jobs Program, which was about career awareness building, and transition it into career outcomes using a employment navigator approach, benefiting not just folks going into green jobs training, but employment into port-related living wage careers. And so we really want to thank our internal co-executive sponsors, external relations, and maritime environment and sustainability, and a very big thank you to all of our community partners to date. So we'll take your questions.
Thank you for the presentation. So I'll turn to my colleagues to see what questions you might have for staff. Commissioner Fellman.
I just had to raise my head and shoes. knew I was asking a question.
He always got something to say.
Well, I really appreciate this work. It's fantastic. And I just recall back in 2019 when we passed the resolution originally, I was inquiring about saying, well, I know the county and the city also have community programs that target this community, and I was starting to feel a little concerned that, like, you know, how many community meetings can the same community attend, and it's like on us to coordinate so that we can all be delivering the services that we want, that these communities need. And I was told at that time that you know, we were sort of collectively getting ourselves together, and then we would be able to better partner with the other agencies. I would like an update on that, but one of the things I do want to report is that one of my colleagues who's very much involved with the Duwamish River cleanup and restoration work for the county says they're actively employing Dirt Corps. So that, you know, so Dirt Corps is, you know, they're not just doing our work, right? And so there's clearly, we've trained a task force of folks that are more broadly employable. But in terms of this $480,000, do we also have, like, are we leveraging matches with the other, our brethren jurisdictions?
Thank you for that question. So you heard in public comment, Gus Williams from the City of Seattle. We've reached out to our public agency partners to first make sure that there's a community need that hasn't been met, and they have they've shared with us that they're not recruiting many people from the Duwamish community into these green job trainings programs, and so. And when I say green job training programs, a lot of these are construction related, right? We need more people in electrical scopes and HVAC scopes. Those are two of the biggest green jobs that are existing occupations. And so they've been clear that we need more folks coming from Duwamish. They're not getting the outcomes there that they would like. And so they're very excited to partner with us. So in that phase 2 that Robert talked about, all of the training programs are funded by other agencies, King County, the city, and other partners, Sound Transit, et cetera. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Calkins.
I've come to know a bit more about the K-12 pathways through organizations like Washington Alliance for Better Schools and our experience working on Maritime High School. And I'm curious how we're linking to, in particular, the public school systems in the area, and both in terms of creating awareness for those students and also potentially even integrating some of these programs into those schools.
Yeah, so great question. We do know that with this first phase, the Duwamish Valley Green Jobs, there was definitely a partnership with youth cohorts. They were offering classes to 16, 17, 18-year-olds. And we heard loud and clear from those community partners that it's incredibly resource intensive, right? Some of these young folks, you need to escort them back to their high school in other parts of the region to get their, to show that they were students there so that they can get ID from the school to then get a state-issued driver's license. So we know there's intensive services that can go along with that, and so we'll be thoughtful about how big we, how much outreach we do into schools, because these are limited resources. That said, we have created a space within this scope so that 16 and 17-year-olds could be served, and expect that whoever is hired to do the navigation work will be in the schools and will be talking to counselors. So I guess I'm saying two things. We will open the door, but the door can only open so wide, and we'll be looking to other partners who do work specifically with youth, because I think there's also a need for services that are youth focused. And so part of this outreach planning this navigator will do will be to connect with other organizations they can refer youth to.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to add that along with this, the Coalition of Climate Careers, which is a strategic partnership between the city, the county, and the port, is going to be standing up at their first public coalition meeting where we're actively engaging high schools, middle schools to come learn about the green jobs and the opportunities that present themselves. And so I think just to piggyback on Anna's point, there is some motivation right now to build and integrate what we have already aligned with our Coalition of Climate Careers to integrate that effort into the Duwamish Career Navigation Services as well.
Thank you.
Commissioner Cho?
No, I don't have any questions. I just want to commend you for the great work. I'm really glad we're doing this, and it's a crucial part of our workforce development DI effort, so thanks for carrying it on.
And I second that. Are there any questions from Commissioner Mohammed online?
No, no questions, but I also echo the words of Commissioner Cho. Appreciate the work that's happening and looking forward to supporting this item today.
Wonderful. And so with that, Commissioners, is there a motion and a second to approve item 10A as presented?
So moved.
I'll second.
Well, the motion's been made by Commissioner Fellman and seconded by Commissioner Cho. Is there any further discussion or debate on the item? Seeing none, Clerk Payne, please go ahead and call the roll for the vote.
Thank you. Commissioner Calkins?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Cho?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Fellman?
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Mohammed?
Aye.
Thank you. And Commissioner Hasagawa?
Aye.
Thank you. There are 5 ayes and 0 nays for this item.
Wonderful. The motion carries, and thank you very much. And that brings us to presentations and staff reports. Deputy Clerk Payne, please read the next item into the record, and Executive Director Metric will introduce it.
Thank you. This is item 11A, federal grants presentation.
Commissioners, several actions at the federal level continue to cause uncertainty and confusion. In particular, the implementation and then court-ordered withdrawal of a federal funding freeze, as well as the resignations and terminations of federal staff. Today's presentation will review the potential impact of withdrawal of federal grants and what they might have on the port priorities and projects right before us. And so we have a presenter this afternoon is Elizabeth Morrison, Director of Corporate Finance and Budget. So, Elizabeth.
Good afternoon. I'll begin with a disclaimer. I am not a grant expert and would like to thank my colleagues in airport and seaport finance and government relations and environmental who helped assemble this information. So with that, can we begin with the next slide? Thank you. We're going to provide some background today on federal grants and some of the current risks that we are seeing associated with them, particularly focused on the capital grants that were included in the port's draft plan of finance for 2025 to 2029. I'm not going to provide any detail on the Seaport Alliance grants. I know you've received 2 briefings now on those grants in quite a bit of detail. Next slide, please. Beginning with some background, we put together a capital improvement plan every year that covers 5 years of projects. Those projects are included in the plan based on the need for those projects. We then develop a funding plan for that program, which may include grants. We only include grants in that funding plan that have a high level of certainty or a high level of confidence in receiving those grants. They include grants that we've already been awarded, entitlement grants, and grants that are awarded based on formula or specific criteria that we feel comfortable we will receive. So for the current plan of finance, we included $324 million for the airport. Since we regularly update our numbers, that's now $337 million total federal grants. That's roughly 7% of the funding for the airport. For the seaport, we've included $33 million. Those are all Seaport Alliance grants. That's the Port of Seattle's half of those grants. So the Seaport Alliance has $66 million of federal grants, but we would benefit from $33 million to pay for our half of the CIP. Next slide, please. When we talk about the current risks associated with grants, there's actually a number of layers of risk in that, beginning with grant opportunities. So this would be how grants are awarded and potential changes to the criteria under which grants are awarded. For example, there may be criteria that an organization doesn't offer DEI programs. that could become a criteria for grant award. So that's a risk. That would apply only to future grants and not grants that have already been awarded, obviously. Grant availability, the actual dollars, the grant availability is provided by Congress, so a cessation of those grants would require some legislative action. But we could also see stalling in payments, whether or not that's legal, so that might be a temporary change in how payments are made or whether payments are made available. Grant administration, this is the reduction in staff we're seeing that could slow down the awarding of grants or the approval of reimbursements. This may be more of a timing issue than an absolute loss of grants. Grant assurances and conditions. When we receive a grant, there are ongoing requirements that the port has. And this, similar to the grant opportunities, there could be changes in those conditions or assurances that are inconsistent with the port's values. Next slide, please. Putting some numbers with these risks, if we layer this lens of risks over the grants that we included in our plan of finance and looking specifically at the airport, we had 150 million of grants that have already been awarded, of which 80 million had not yet been drawn, and so that 80 million is what would have been remaining, and so that we consider fairly low risk. More medium type of risk would be those that are pending or future grants. The biggest share of that is for the South Concourse project. Over 200 million of that 257 million is associated with the South Concourse. But there are also amounts for the airfield paving project and for Highline School noise mitigation. And when I say these are low risk or medium risk, I'd like to note that those are relative terms. So medium risk being a little more at risk than what is low risk, and not meant to be absolute, since it's very difficult to say what absolute risk is these days. Next slide, please. This provides a more granular look at those numbers. So with the awarded grants, which we consider to be generally low risk, within that there are relative differences of risk too, with the Airport Improvement Program entitlement grants being very low risk. Discretionary grants for noise, where there are set-aside funds, those are low risk. The general AIP discretionary grants that are formula-based, and the airport infrastructure grants, those are also formula-based, so those are pretty low risk. The airport terminal program, that's competitively based, but we already have about 20 million that has been awarded already, so that's maybe low to moderate risk. And just to provide a little context, all of these grants would have in other years been considered no or extremely low risk. So the fact that we're even talking about these as risky is a change. The pending and future grants, again, different types of grants have different levels of risk, with the formula-based grants and entitlements being lower risk than the airport terminal program, which is probably the highest level of risk in this list. Next slide, please. In addition to airport grants, we have a $3 million EPA grant for clean ports. This is, as of yesterday, active and available, but it is something that we are watching, since environmental programs may be more in the crosshairs. Then for the seaport, there are no federal grants for maritime, but there are for the Seaport Alliance. So that 33 million, that's our share of the Seaport Alliance grants that were in the plan of finance. And then there's also The HMT funds, those are not covered here. They're not grants. They are handled separately. There are different risks associated with those, but they are formula-based, so we have no reason to think that that funding is at any particular risk. Next slide. If we were to lose any of this grant funding, then we would need to have some kind of course correction. And that could be in the form of reducing projects, or it could be in the form of finding other funding sources within our funding parameters. So we just need to be prepared for any course corrections. I'll note that this does not include state grants, and to the extent that state grants are pass-through of federal funds, there could also be some risks there. So the recommendation right now is to effectively stay the course. We have no reason to think that these grants are in jeopardy at this time, but we are mindful of the risks that are out there, and we will keep monitoring them. Eric Shinfield is doing a great job of tracking all the efforts at the federal level, so we will continue to monitor and be prepared for any course corrections if needed.
That would conclude the presentation. Thank you very much. So at this time, I'll turn to my colleagues to see if you have any questions or general comments for staff.
Go ahead. Who wants to start?
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. This uncertainty related to actions of the federal government, from on again, off again tariffs to rumors of executive orders that may impact port operations, to uncertainty around grants that have already been, where contracts are signed. Quite honestly, I'm waking up most nights in the middle of the night stewing about how we approach this, because it is a huge deal for the Port of Seattle and for virtually every institution that receives some form of federal funding. And sometimes I think that grant is an inappropriate word, because often these grants are essentially the funding mechanism for a federal requirement that we're attempting to adhere to. So, whether it's an upgrade to a communication system, or a standard required for runway maintenance, whatever it might be. And so, when we received your analysis and I read through it the other day, it quite honestly, it felt like better news than I'd anticipated, but still not what you want to hear, right? This has just never been an issue. When we had received, when we got news of an award, we could kind of bank it, and now we can't. And that uncertainty adds costs, real costs. Just the fact that that we're talking about it right now and occupying all of our time is a real resource allocation from our staff that we could have better spent on innovations and future planning and taking care of our customers. So suffice to say, this is all very frustrating to have to go through. But I do believe, and I'm kind of curious from your perspective, it does seem as if we're starting to get more and more footing around which of these are moving forward, which might be suspended. And with each of those, it's making it a little bit easier. We're kind of chipping away at some of that uncertainty. So maybe you could speak to us about what is the time period during which we're going to remain in this kind of period of uncertainty on most of these grants?
I think one of the uncertainties is how long this could last. Maybe until the next election, I don't know. I do think that timing is a vulnerability, and I've always believed that having time to make appropriate course corrections is important. And one of the ways we buy that time is by maintaining sufficient liquidity and doing careful planning. and having contingencies. And we do all that. So I think that's why we can stay the course and keep monitoring and not have to overreact to all the noise.
Yeah, I think, you know, over the next few months, prudence is going to be really important, but it's also going to make for a very challenging budget writing season for 26 too. And so just when we thought we'd return to normal after the noise of the pandemic and budgeting finally subsided, now we're back into a situation where we're really going to have to, I think, be conservative in our planning and make sure that we have the liquidity as an agency that simply can't. You know, we need to be able to operate every day, all year long, every week, every day, every hour. So thanks again for your analysis on this.
Commissioner Cho?
Yeah, Elizabeth, as always, I so appreciate the analysis that you provide us, and I take issue with the statement that you are not a specialist in any of this. I think clearly, you know.
But
you
I
know.
have one with me, Robert Jacopetti.
I have a few questions. You know, I do really appreciate this analysis. I think it's really helped us to get a sense of the picture on a 10,000-foot level of how this is going to affect us over the next 4 years. You know, in years past, when we look at our CIP relative to you know, revenue projections and whatnot, we do see or like to see a timeline with how much of that CIP spend will be from a year to year, just to get a sense of the lumpiness of that spend, right? So between now and 2029, of the $337 million that we were expecting, what do we expect to lose in 26 and 27, 28, 29, right? And obviously that will help us inform our budgeting and how we're going to mitigate those potential losses. I trust that the team has already done that in analysis, but I think it would be really helpful for us to see it so that we know going into 26 and into 27 what our cash flows relative to, you know, grants looks like. And so, you know, I would imagine, like for instance, for the S Concourse project, which we're expecting a lot of money for, I wonder, can we, you know, wait out this presidency, right? And see if the timeline is such that maybe we can start it in 28, spend some money in 29, and then expect a new presidency, and well, we will have a new president, right? Come, you know, that time, and things kind of turn back to, hopefully, knock on wood, what we would have expected today, right? And so I think when we talk about mitigating the risks of these budget challenges, we also need to be strategic with our timeline. And so it would be really helpful to kind of get that next level analysis from the team and get, so that we can start to think about how we go into our budgeting session. One of the questions I did have for you, however, is, you know, as we think about or bake in the risk of losing potentially all this funding, like let's just, for the sake of argument, say we lose the $337 million, right? Have we gone through an analysis of what mechanisms, levers we have to stop some of that funding gap, whether it's issuing more bonds or drawing on our levy, or drawing on our I don't know if we still have the line of credit with the banks that we used during the pandemic, but I imagine that there are other levels that we levers in the system within our ecosystem. Do we need to change our debt to cash ratio from 1.5 to 1.25? Like, those are the kind of questions that are on my mind, and I wonder if we've ventured into those options yet.
That is actually the next level of analysis we will be doing. It will likely be a combination of some shifting in the timing of projects and the use of additional debt. I would say that we probably would want to maintain our current standards for the use of debt, because now is probably not the time to be overly aggressive, because we'll need those extra cushions that we have built into those parameters. In terms of the timing, we can provide a more detailed year-by-year We are expecting to spend about $1 billion at the airport this year, but the grant funding would largely come from grants that have already been awarded. The pending or future grants, as you noted, is primarily associated with the South Concourse project, and that project is in design, and so there's still a lot of uncertainty about the total costs and the timing. All that is being worked on, and we'll be bringing more information back to you during the course of the year, and particularly as we develop the CIP for the 2026 budget.
Great. Well, I look forward to that. Thank you.
Commissioner Fellman.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate that, and the team that helped inform all this. I have a particular interest in the EPA grants. So since when do we get clean port grants specifically? We're finally recognized as critical infrastructure that we can green up. Very disappointing. $3 billion disappears into the smoke. But I've heard, very conflicting information that some folks said that it's taken off the website altogether. You couldn't even find a tracking for it. And then I've been told, well, it's in the pipeline. And I think your comments here seem to be more encouraging than what I've heard before. It's like strictly environmental, and I thought that's like one of the things that are, on the chopping block right next to DEI. And, but do you have, or maybe Sandy has some crystal ball that gives any sign of hope for EPA?
You're absolutely right. It has been a little bit on again, off again. The most recent word is that it's available and we can use it. But I think the timing of when we use it is, could be some time. And I don't know if Sandy has anything she wants to add to that.
Thank you, Sandy Kilroy, Senior Director, Environment and Sustainability. Elizabeth mentioned it. We have had on again, off again emails from EPA on the grant. It is now on again, and the staff are working on a number of scenarios of how we proceed, because we are rightly so wary of moving forward and investing a lot of effort, and including with our partners that we are doing this with, in case they then pull it back again. So we are coming up with a number of scenarios of how we could implement this in a way that also safeguards if the money were to disappear. But we're hopeful.
We're not letting out contracts just yet.
Not just yet, but the one of the things that would come back to commission is the MOUs that we have with our subrecipients that we were partnering on with this. And so we're hopeful we can bring those back to commission for approval, and then figure out a way to stage the grant so that we are able to do some of the work without fearing loss of the grant.
Thank you. And just for clarity, for the record, I said $3 billion. That's the entire grant program. We're talking about $3 million, right? So not to conflate the total with the local. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go anywhere, Sandy, because I might need you yet. Just a couple questions. So given the shifting landscape from the program management perspective, how are we still receiving information? I hear you say you have on and off again communications with the EPA, but how is the actual grant administration and management process happening?
At the moment, we have had communication with the EPA grant manager. It's one of the few communications we have had with a number of federal agencies. As you've probably been reading, one of the messages that a lot of federal agencies have received is to pull back communication with partners, and we have definitely seen that throughout a number of our programs. But this one grant in particular, we have had email messages regarding the availability of the money, and so we are working with them to, again, as I mentioned earlier, figure out how we can proceed without getting kind of too far forward of reimbursements.
And is it that our federal partners that we typically communicate with are awaiting further decision points or directive from the executive?
I don't think I can speak to what's happening with inside the agency, but I have heard that a lot of decisions do now require much higher level, either regional administration or headquarters for approval on a number of things. But for this particular one, I don't have the answer to that.
At the grant management level, do we still have cooperative partnership, or I'm hearing you say that it's
At the moment, yes.
Right.
I
Okay.
guess we're just a little gun shy, right? Because we had this on and off again, and we're hearing stories of other situations. So at the moment, we are being told the money is available to us, and so that's why we're looking at these different scenarios of how to move forward.
Okay, and then as we have our own modeling for, high, low, high, medium to high, and then high risk grants, I'm hearing you talk about the careful planning and the contingencies that we have. I hear you loud and clear when you say we need to just stay the course at this point. There's no reason to overreact, and I think that's the message from this body also, is that we're committed to continuing to closely monitor the situation. And I appreciate the update that you're bringing to us here in public forum. What would you anticipate is an appropriate timeline for us to continue a dialogue from a high level perspective for grants?
We're happy to come back whenever it's helpful to you, or if we see something that is a change that we think would warrant an update to this body.
Okay, and then just reiterating the message that the maritime grants that are received are largely managed through the Northwest Seaport Alliance, which is the joint venture between the Port of Seattle and the Port of Tacoma, and we received a separate presentation on that most recently last Friday. So thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Seeing none, thank you very
Madam
much.
President, Commissioner Mohammed's online.
Commissioner Mohammed.
Thank you, Commissioner Hasagawa, and thanks for checking in just earlier. I actually had two questions that I wanted to ask regarding the state piece. And first of all, thank you for your presentation and the helpful analysis you've provided thus far. I wanted to know, with the state pass-through funds, some of those dollars are at risk for impact. Do we know exactly what that dollar amount could look like, and are we engaging our state partners around the risks that they face?
We have not started that process yet, but we certainly can. We can work with John Flanagan, and there are several state grants, particularly at the Alliance. Also, maritime, the big maritime state grants is for the Maritime Innovation Center. So we can come back to you with more of an assessment of state grants.
That would be really helpful for whenever the next sort of presentation or update is on this, whether it's in public session or executive session. The other thing that I'm thinking about, and I don't need an answer for it now, but maybe Mr. Metrick, this is something for you to think about, is as we think about potential impacts, having some sort of prioritization list of projects that we could decide to adjust or potentially delay. I think it would be helpful for that information to come to us as commissioners as early as possible for us to be able to make the most informed decisions and ensure that we engage with our stakeholders as well. So just wanted to mention that. Again, thank you for the presentation, and that concludes my comments and questions.
All right, Executive Director Metrick.
Thank you, President Hasagawa. Commissioner Mohammed, if I could just say, yes, we'll continue to do that. I think one thing is we look at these and we learn more. We're really keeping these in the options and looking at this as we drive towards that the commission budget retreat in June is where we traditionally look at some of these things, and we're hoping it'll be much clearer on some of these aspects of these going forward and how it affects mainly our capital programs as well within that. But I also want to say there's other factors here that we have to, other factors because the tariffs impacting steel and aluminum and other construction materials, this is building into this as well as inflation. It all goes into that. Well, which things, is it the timeline to delay a project or stretch out the timeline? We'll be putting all those factors together when we come and update you later on in the year. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Moving forward, Deputy Clerk Payne, please read the next item into the record, and Executive Director Metrick will introduce it.
Thank you. This is item 11B, Commission Committees Briefing, 2024 Accomplishments and 2025 Work Plans.
Commissioners Committee allow for deeper dives into areas of interest of the commissioners, and this briefing will report out on 2024 activities and highlight 2025 work plans. And Leanne Shirato, Chief of Staff of the Commission Office, or Deputy Chief of Staff for the Commission Office, will present. Leanne?
We can give her a promotion for the day.
Just for today. Thank you, Executive Director. Thank you, Executive Director, Commission President Hasagawa, and members of the Commission. We have Erica Chung, Strategic Advisor, with us this afternoon to present. We also have the rest of our Strategic Advisor team with us, should you have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Chief of Staff Shirato. Good afternoon, President Hasagawa, Commissioners, and Executive Director again. My name is Erica Chung, Commission Strategic Advisor, here today on behalf of my Strategic Advisor colleagues to provide the Commission Committee's annual briefing. The purpose of the briefing is to offer greater transparency to the work of the committees, what has been covered or accomplished in 2024, as Executive Director Metric stated, and to give early visibility to the proposed work plan for 2025. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank my colleagues, executive leadership team, and staff for their tremendous work and collaboration in building out the work plans for 2025. Next slide, please. As you can see, there are currently 7 committees and 1 board that commissioners serve on. And at the December 2024 retreat, commissioners agreed to their committee assignments for 2025. Next slide, please. So as you can see, Commissioner Calkins has agreed to serve on 4 committees. Commissioner Cho has agreed to serve on 2. Commissioner Fellman has agreed to serve on 3 committees, and Commission President Hasagawa has agreed to serve on 3 committees, and Commissioner Mohammed has agreed to serve on 4 committees. And also, just to share the Strategic Advisor, Francis Cho, Commission Strategic Advisor, is the liaison to the Port Arts and Culture Board. Tyler Emsky is the liaison to the Aviation and Audit Committees. Michelle Hart, Commission Clerk, is the liaison to the Governance Committee. And V. Nguyen is the liaison to the Equity and Workforce Development and Waterfront Industrial Lands Committees. And I currently serve as the liaison to the Sustainability, Environment, and Climate Committee and the AV Workforce Conditions Ad Hoc Committees. Next slide, please. In 2024, the Audit Committee, co-chaired by Commissioners Calkins and Hasagawa, convened 4 meetings where they were provided oversight of the 2024 internal audit plans and receipt of information related to external audit reports from the Washington State Auditor, Moss Adams, and R.L. Townsend and Associates. Next slide, please. In 2025, the Audit Committee will be co-chaired by Commissioner Calkins and Mohammed and will continue to provide oversight of the internal audit plan and external audit reports. Next slide, please. In 2024, the Aviation Committee, co-chaired by Commissioners Cho and Hasagawa, convened 7 meetings where they reviewed the FAA reauthorization plan, the ground transportation work, taxi order, SCA accessibility efforts, cyber attack response, and ground transportation action plan, Sea Concourse expansion. Next slide, please. In 2025, Aviation Committee will be co-chaired by Commissioners Cho and Calkins and will continue to offer oversight of the many capital projects, the FIFA World Cup preparation in anticipation of the thousands of folks anticipated in 2026, and SCA's Ground Transportation Access Plan implementation, expanding alternative transportation options for airport workers. Next slide, please. In 2024, the Equity and Workforce Development Committee, co-chaired by Commissioners Calkins and Hasagawa, convened 6 meetings where commissioners offered early input and guidance on the Language Access Plan, International Market Study, Apprentice and Priority Hire Program, Disparity Study, and Diversity in Contracting and other port programs, ensuring alignment with commissioners' priorities and port-century agenda. Next slide, please. In 2025, the Equity Workforce Development Committee will be co-chaired by Commission President Hasagawa and Commissioner Mohammed, And they anticipate convening about 6 meetings and will review the progress of workforce development, diversity and contracting, priority hire, youth maritime career, and Office of Equity and Diversity Inclusion programs. The committee also anticipates reviewing the environmental justice framework and equity and budgeting to ensure that it is working as intended. Next slide, please. In 2024, the Governance Committee, co-chaired by Commissioners Mohammed and Cho, met once, but had a very productive meeting where they reviewed and recommended for adoption of the reviewed Code of Ethics, bylaws, and rules of procedures, and the Governance Committee Charter. Next slide, please. In 2025, the Governance Committee, co-chaired by Commission President Hasegawa and Commissioner Mohammed, will meet as needed to address governance matters as they arise. Next slide, please. In 2024, the Sustainability, Environment, and Climate Committee, co-chaired by Commissioners Cho and Fellman, convened 8 meetings. It was a very active committee with 11 agenda topics, with oversight of capital projects under the Sustainable Evaluation Framework, oversight of the Maritime, Climate, and Air Action Plan implementation, and waterfront clean energy strategy implementation efforts, reviewed and recommended for adoption the Land Stewardship Principle Order and the Tree Replacement Standards, and other sustainability programs in furtherance of Commissioner priorities and the Port Century Agenda. Next slide, please. In 2025, this SCAC committee will be co-chaired by Commissioners Calkins and Cho and will convene about 10 meetings. And there is a lot of topics on there, so I won't go over it, but they are going to be continue to cover the capital projects under the Sustainable Evaluation Framework. They will preview the environmental performance metrics and the 2024 Maritime Climate Action and Air Action Plan implementation progress and meeting the goals. And they will also review the environmental justice framework and the sustainable evaluation framework, reviewing to see if the frameworks are working as intended, and building energy programs and meeting our building emissions reductions goals. Next slide, please. In 2024, the Waterfront Industrial Lands Committee, co-chaired by Commissioners Calkins and Fellman, convened 5 committee meetings, and they reviewed the Wasca property, future lines of business, real estate strategic planning, City of Seattle initiatives with the Port Nexus, State of SODO, transportation project, CEM updates, and Herald Administration SODO vision. Next slide, please. In 2025, Commissioner Calkins and Fellman will will co-chair the Waterfront Industrial Lands Committee, because of its immense importance to the port and in providing living wage jobs regionally. The committee is currently scheduled to meet 4 times and will deliberate on industrial lands, review the real estate portfolios, Wasca and SODO properties, and advance manufacturing and clean energy innovation opportunities. Next slide, please. In 2024, Commissioners Mohammed and Fellman served on the Port-wide Arts and Culture Board, along with 3 port members and 3 public members. On January 14th of this year, the Commission received a Port-wide Arts and Culture Board accomplishment briefing from Tommy Gregory, Senior Public Arts Program Manager. So I will just mention a few highlights. The Aviation Arts Program remains the most active public arts program in the U.S., notably with its capital projects, maintenance and conservation efforts, as well as acquisition, which is collected from predominantly Pacific Northwest artists. From the installation of permanent work to temporary exhibits, 2024 was marked with many accomplishments, such as the installation of Sarah Moore on A Clear Day You Can See Forever, and Kyle Olson and Sandra Williams' Origins of Fire. Next slide, please. In 2025, Commissioners Calkins and Fellman agreed to serve on the Port-wide Arts and Culture Board. There is currently 1 public member vacancy on the Art Board, so the board will seek to fill the vacancy in the coming months. And they will continue its work in art collection, conservation, and maintenance efforts, ongoing asset management, and continued growth in the public arts program. Also, the team will complete over 20 installations in time for the FIFA next year and hope to hire a public art program manager to help accomplish this. Also, the team is currently working on installing checkpoint artworks, complete restroom modification art installations. Next slide, please. In 2024, the Aviation Workforce Conditions Ad Hoc Committee, co-chaired by Commissioners Hasagawa and Mohammed, met twice, but were able to advance 3 out of the 4 items within this purview. The port now has free hygiene products at all port-operated facilities. The committee reviewed and recommended updating the third-party code of conduct, a statement of values and standards that will be part of the solicitation process as part of the port's effort to increase awareness and reduce human trafficking. And CPO started its implementation of the third-party code of conduct. The committee also reviewed and recommended for adoption the healthcare order to direct the executive director to examine how enhanced healthcare benefits for SCA workers impact worker safety, attraction and retention, and or for other business-related outcomes at the port. The order was adopted on December 10th, 2024. Next slide, please. Commission President Hasagawa and Commissioner Mohammed will continue to co-chair the ad hoc committee in 2025. The ad hoc committee already met once in February, where they reviewed and recommended for adoption the child care order to direct the executive director to conduct a feasibility study for increasing child care access that is accessible, affordable, and flexible for SCA workers, and to establish a child care navigator program for SCA workers. The order was adopted on February 11, 2025, and moving forward, the ad hoc committee will meet as needed to monitor the progress of the healthcare order and the child care order. Next slide, please. Well, this concludes my briefing, and I can take any questions you have or punt it to my colleagues. Thank you.
Okay, commissioners, what questions or comments might you have? Commissioner Cho.
My comment is, wow, we're a busy bunch.
Yes.
I think we need a pay raise. No, thank you, Erica, for that briefing. I really appreciate you keeping track of all the great work we did last year. There's clearly a lot of work ahead of us, and I appreciate my colleagues engaging on all these issues. I think we learned today through Elizabeth's briefing and obviously some of the discussions we had prior to today's public session that we have some work cut out for us, both internally but also due to some external factors. And so I don't foresee any of our work slowing down. I think now is the time to double down. And so I appreciate ahead of time all the work that both the commission office and the staff are doing to keep us on track and ahead of the curve. So thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Cho. Commissioner Calkins. Commissioner Fellman.
Thank you once again for your succinct encapsulation of the work that we do, and it still sounds long. But the one thing I just wanted to point out, though, is that these are the port's internal committees, and all of us also serve on external committees. So just when you think we're slacking, there's that much more going on that maybe at some point we can at least summarize that there's, whether it be the PSRC or Visit Seattle or whatever, there's a lot of other places where we're also representing the port just externally.
Yes. Not seeing a hand raised by my colleague Commissioner Mohammed, but I will just say that my thought is that, well, first, thank you for the presentation, and thank you to everybody for your work and the staff that that supports the advancement of all these different buckets of work. I would like to propose a notion of an ad hoc legislative committee. We have one for the Northwest Seaport Alliance, and during legislative session, we find ourselves in largely a reactive state. Our legislative director, who is down on the ground in Olympia, has a long list of over 100 items. And I think that transparency and visibility and input lies more than just with the president. Really, it should be informed by the will of the body. So it's late in the game for this year, but I'm just planting a seed to think about for next year. There could be coordination between our Alliance staff and our Port of Seattle staff, but there were a couple of I think missed opportunities, I'll put it that way. that I think that we as a commission can organize around if we were to be proactive in establishing leads and a point of contact and building in that structure for regular updates. And again, next year will be a shortened session, so it'd be a shorter time commitment, probably with a larger flurry or larger cadence of meetings. But please just sit on that, and we'll take it up with our acting chief of staff, Shirato, and see what we might be able to come up with so we can do better next year. All right, seeing no further questions or comments, Commissioner Mohammed, do you have any questions?
Just a quick comment. First of all, thank you for the presentation. And Commissioner President Hasagawa, I do agree with your point about a legislative maybe committee, but maybe we don't have to stand up a new committee. Maybe we can add that as a agenda item to one of the existing committees. I would welcome that. But I wanted to comment. I appreciate the work that my colleagues do, and I just really appreciate how this was outlined, both the accomplishments from 2024, what we've done, and then the path ahead and what we're going to work on moving forward. And I also hope that these presentations are helpful for port staff and the public to understand the work of the commission office and the commissioners. Thank you for the time.
And thank you very much for the presentation, Erica. And commissioners, that concludes our business meeting agenda for the day. Are there any closing comments at this time or motions relating to committee referrals from commissioners? Commissioner Cho.
Yeah, a little off topic, but still relevant to us, is I just wanted to acknowledge Peter McGraw,
yes.
Who for so many years has been an instrumental part of this organization, an institution in himself, really. Peter McGraw was probably the first person to welcome me to the port when I first got elected in 2019. He had this great tradition of going to the election parties of the commissioners who get elected for the first time. And I remember in November 2019 when I got elected, and this guy, Peter McGraw, just walked into my election party. I didn't actually know who he was at the time. And it was himself and Mike Merritt, our former chief of staff. He came with a baseball cap, a Port of Seattle baseball cap, and that was his thing. He did that, from what I understand, for every commissioner who was new to the port, just to be the first to welcome us to this institution. And obviously thereafter, I worked with Peter a lot in his role as one of our media officers on the maritime side. He would always staff me whenever I had interviews with media. And beyond just the A to B's to C's of the port, he always had this historical knowledge of the port, given his long tenure here, that was so invaluable to me as I was getting up to speed about the institution and the work that we do. But obviously, as an invaluable member of this family, he will never be forgotten. In fact, that voice you hear when we go into public session telling us our rules is the voice of Peter McGraw.
That's not Peter.
Is it not Peter McGraw? Is that Perry? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that was Peter. Is that right? Are you sure?
I asked him.
Okay. I was told it was Peter McGraw. Regardless, I very much miss him, and he's going to be remembered here for years to come. And we miss you, Peter. Hope you rest in peace.
All right, staying off topic. No, I didn't know that there was a reception for him this weekend, but I'm not going to be in town. But one of the other things about Peter is that he was a great music fan, and I would occasionally see him at a concert. And he also was a mixologist, so it goes hand in hand with music and booze. But and he mixed sound, and so it was one of my other endearing things with Peter was his love of music and bumping into him in a bar out of context. It was still a very warm and comforting feeling. So we do miss him.
Commissioner Mohammed.
Thank you for the time. Yeah, I wanted to make a couple of comments, and I'll start with Peter. I also just wanted to take a moment to recognize the passing of Peter. He was someone that was kind, thoughtful, and respectful, and similar to Commissioner Cho's point about after winning your election, him being the first person to reach out to you. I still have his voicemail on my phone, and I still remember that moment of just excitement. Like he was the first person from the port to call, and I revisit that call and like the anniversary of my election, and so his words stuck with me. And he just was a kind person, and it meant a lot. He meant a lot to the port, and his legacy of kindness and integrity will not be forgotten. And my thoughts are with his loved ones, the port staff, folks who worked very, very closely with him for many, many years. My deepest condolences goes out to all of you. And in addition to that, I just wanted to say happy Women's History Month to all the women in the port, the communication team. I want to give you guys a huge shout out for how you guys are capturing all the incredible women who work at the Port of Seattle, and who are at the forefront of so many of our projects, breaking barriers and driving meaningful change at our port. And so I just want to say thank you to all those who are being honored and their contributions in our community. It does not go unnoticed. And just lastly, for the folks who have the federal administration changes, the policy changes, I just want to say we remain committed to closely following these policy shifts that impact our work. And we're focused on ensuring that we are in alignment with our leadership in Washington State, and we'll continue to protect and uplift our communities, and we'll continue to monitor these changes and adapt as needed. Yeah, and just a health reminder, I'm battling a cold right now. It's spreading. I feel pretty sick, and just want to tell people, while we see the cherry blossoms coming out, there's still flu out there. Stay healthy, and don't forget to take care of yourselves. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Mohammed. Well, folks, that concludes our business meeting for today. Executive Director Metric, do you have any closing comments for us?
I just want to thank commissioners for the kind words about Peter McGraw, his loss to us. You know, a man of eclectic and all fashion of whatever, whether it would be cars, his food, music, and everything. So he'll be, you know, and his really professional support for all of us. Let me just reflect on that and say just how I found him, preparing me to interact with the media, editorial boards, and on a really contentious issues is really deeply valued and will be sorely missed. So I appreciate those kind words about that, and one of our colleagues, close colleagues, our family, and I thank you for all of that, and thank you for your actions today. Thanks, commissioners.
Thank you, sir. And hearing no further comments and having no further business, if there's no objection, commissioners, the time is 1:44 and we are adjourned.
Thank you.